When you think of ancient civilizations, a few probably come to mind: the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, and the Mayans. These are the most well-known ancient peoples, largely because they left behind the most for us to study. But ancient civilizations existed all over the world for thousands of years, and many of them are often overlooked. Today we're going to explore some of these other ancient civilizations that you've probably never heard of. The Nok civilization. The Nok civilization, usually referred to as the Nok culture, was one of the earliest known societies in Western Africa. Unfortunately, they did not have a written language, so knowledge about their society is very limited. In fact, we didn't even know they existed until the 20th century. In 1928, Colonel Dent Young, the co-owner of a mining company, was mining for tin near the village of Nok in modern-day Nigeria. It was there, buried 7 meters or 24 feet underground, that the first artifacts from the Nok culture were found in the form of some terracotta statues. The area remained quiet for another 15 years until 1943, when tin miners again accidentally unearthed terracotta figurines. A clerk overseeing the mine took home the head of one of these sculptures to use as a scarecrow in his yam field. The scarecrow stood for about a year until it was noticed by Bernard Fagg, a British archaeologist and museum curator working extensively in Nigeria at the time. When Bernard saw the scarecrow, he immediately noticed how similar it was in style to the previous terracotta pieces that had been discovered by Young. Fagg traveled to the mining site, where he was shown more pieces of art that had been unearthed. It became immediately clear to Bernard that the mining was accidentally both discovering and destroying these priceless archaeological artifacts. But it would take nearly 20 years for proper archaeological excavations to begin. Within the first week of preliminary excavations, discoveries of wrought iron and iron slag were made, leading to the classification of the Nok culture as an Iron Age civilization. Archaeologists used the artifacts found to date the Nok culture as having existed from roughly 1500 BC to 500 AD. However, nobody's entirely sure where these people came from. The crops they grew, particularly millets, are indigenous to the Sahara region in Africa, leading many to speculate that the Nok culture began in northern Africa before migrating to modern-day Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa, though this can't be stated conclusively yet. The terracotta figurines remain the most iconic part of Nok culture, both because of their abundance and their distinctive style. Though fully intact sculptures are exceedingly rare, there are many examples of terracotta heads. The heads are nearly life-size and are easily identifiable by their triangular eyes and their detailed and elaborate hairstyles. Though the heads are nearly the size of a full-grown adult, the bodies are not. One example, which can be found in the Louvre, shows a full Nok terracotta figure with a head nearly the size of the entire rest of the body. These sculptures have been found across an area of 78,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of South Carolina. However, analysis of the clay shows that all of it almost certainly came from a single centralized source. This suggests that the Nok culture was part of one expansive civilization, rather than various tribes using a similar art style. In addition to their terracotta art, the Nok are also known for their use of iron tools. Archaeologists have found over a dozen iron smelting furnaces, and there are numerous examples of iron tools and weapons as well as intricately crafted iron decorations. They were advanced metal workers, and there is strong evidence that they developed iron metallurgy between 750 and 550 BC, with some evidence even suggesting that it may have been developed before 1000 BC. What makes the Nok culture's skill with iron so fascinating is that they began phasing out their stone tools for iron ones. Now that might not sound like a big deal at first. I mean, metal tools are better than stone ones, so of course they would have made the trade. However, that's not what happened throughout the rest of the world. Sure, everybody else abandoned their stone tools as well, but civilizations went from the Stone Age to the Copper Age to the Bronze Age, and then finally to the Iron Age. The jump from using stone tools to iron is almost entirely unprecedented, with nearly the entire world smelting copper for a full millennium before developing iron metallurgy. By around 200 AD, the Nok culture was gone. They may have depleted their resources of either iron or coal, but for now, all we can do is speculate. The Corral Soup Civilization. The Corral Soup Civilization, also known as Norte Chico or simply Corral, was an ancient civilization in the Caral region of modern-day Peru. Archaeologists have only been particularly aware of the ancient sites in the area since the 1940s, but it is now the oldest known civilization in the Americas, predating the Olmec by 2,000 years. Precisely how old the civilization is has yet to be determined. There's some indication that people began settling the region as early as 9200 BC, but it is generally agreed that the first large-scale cities began being built around 3500 BC. What makes the Caral so intriguing is how differently they developed from civilizations in Eurasia. Unfortunately, these differences, while fascinating, severely limit our knowledge of these ancient people. Particularly, it is their complete lack of ceramics, and thus artworks, that hinders our ability to learn about their daily lives. While ceramics and artwork would have been valuable in that regard, there's still a lot that we could deduce. The Caral civilization flourished along three major rivers in the area: the Fortaleza, the Pativilca, and the Supe. While it's common to have formed along rivers or by freshwater seas, the area is particularly arid. This is obviously less than ideal for early agricultural civilizations, and the rapid development of widespread irrigation was key for their survival. Because the Caral were near the Pacific coast, there were both coastal cities and inland cities. These cities are believed to have been vastly different from one another, with the coastal cities focusing on maritime activities and the inland cities focusing on agriculture. The Dongsun culture. The Dongsun culture gets its name from the village of Dongsun, south of Hanoi, where artifacts from the civilization were first discovered in 1920. Though that is where they were first discovered, it was not the cultural center of the Dongsun people. They were actually more centered in the Red River Valley from 1000 BC until the 1st century AD, and are the ancestors of the Vietnamese. They were an agricultural society with a focus on cultivating rice, breeding pigs, and water buffalo, as well as fishing. However, what the Dongsun are most known for is their incredible skill as bronze workers. The Dongsun were the most advanced bronze working culture in the whole of Southeast Asia. It's unclear whether bronze casting first developed in Southeast Asia and spread to China, or if they developed the practice independently of one another, but there is little dispute that the Dongsun were people without equal. Chief among their casting were the bronze drums. These drums had many uses, including rallying troops to battle during feasts and in times of mourning. The artwork cast into the bronze demonstrated an unparalleled talent, featuring scenes from daily life, recreations of battles, wildlife, boats, and sometimes just elaborate geometric patterns. The drums created by the Dongsun aren't just notable because of their skilled craftsmanship, but because of how numerous they are. To date, hundreds of these bronze drums have been unearthed, and they were by no means small. The average Dongsun drum was 63 centimeters tall and could weigh up to 100 kilograms or 220 pounds. To cast a drum of that size would have required smelting between 1 and 7 tons of copper ore, but they got much bigger than that as well. To date, the largest known drum is the Mung of Pajang. It's not just the largest Dongsun drum, it's the largest single cast bronze kettle drum in the entire world. It comes in at just over 1.8 meters or 6 feet tall and weighs a staggering 1,000 kilograms. As for what ultimately happened to the Dongsun people, once again, we're not completely sure. Theories range from drought to invasion from the Chinese to economic decline as other civilizations began to produce bronze more efficiently. While we can't say for certain which factors played the largest role in their decline, we can still marvel at the massive bronze drums that they left behind.